As I flipped through the credit card statement, an activity usually managed by my husband, Henry, I stumbled upon some unexpected charges: $4,200 at a luxury hotel, $1,300 at upscale restaurants, and $600 at a well-known spa. Each of these expenses was prepaid and suspiciously aligned with the dates Henry was supposed to be attending a PTA board retreat for our daughter Janet's middle school. While I'm not an expert in financial matters, I sensed something was off. Henry, who had taken on the role of a stay-at-home dad, had been my unwavering support, allowing me to focus entirely on my nursing career at the university hospital. His encouragement made it possible for me to work long and unpredictable hours without the guilt that often accompanies such a demanding job. His choice to stay home had not only supported my career but also shielded me from the stresses of juggling work and family. However, these charges suggested plans that might not have been entirely family-oriented. Feeling a mix of concern and curiosity, I slipped a note into his wallet and made a discreet phone call. With Henry set to leave for his retreat in a week, I hoped that whatever was happening would turn into a special experience for him. My name is Nancy, and the relentless pace of my job often blurs the lines between day and night. Yet it's Henry's unwavering support and our daughter Janet's understanding that empower me to keep pushing forward. Despite the challenges, Henry's respect for my dedication has always been evident. He has stood up to the curious gazes of other parents without faltering in his commitment to our family or his involvement in the PTA. His encouragement has been a cornerstone of our life together, driving me to excel in my career while he manages our home with care and diligence. As the primary breadwinner, I've always been dedicated to maintaining our financial stability. One afternoon, my routine was interrupted by a call from my credit card company, alerting me to an overdraft. Just the day before, I had switched the debit account linked to my credit card for convenience, but the funds hadn't transferred in time. In a panic, I rushed to review my credit card statement, something I hadn't done in years since I typically left financial management to Henry, and was met with a shocking revelation. The balance was alarmingly high. My heart raced as I scrolled through the list of transactions, bewildered by purchases I didn't recognize. There were numerous charges at designer boutiques, a high-end perfume shop, and a luxury watch retailer. I was familiar with these brands. I admired them from afar but hadn't bought anything recently. Confused, I considered the possibility that Henry, who also had a card on this account, might be planning a surprise for me. But curiously, all these purchases were made on Wednesdays, a day when I worked night shifts and Henry was typically occupied with PTA meetings. What was really going on? I resolved to confront Henry as soon as I got home, anxiously heading home after a long shift. I was almost at our house when I heard someone call my name. It was Catherine, a fellow PTA member and one of the few mothers I knew from the school. "Hi, Nancy. Long time no see. Just getting off work?" she greeted me warmly. "Yes, just heading back. Thanks for always being there for Henry," I replied, genuinely appreciating her support. "I hope he hasn't been too much trouble." The encounter momentarily distracted me from my worries, but the urgency to uncover the truth behind the credit card statement still weighed heavily on my mind. Struggling to find the right words during our unexpected chat, I quickly shifted the topic to safer ground. Catherine patted me on the shoulder, lightly commenting on my distant demeanor. As she moved, a distinct fragrance wafted through the air, the very scent of the exclusive Marie perfume I had seen on the recent credit card transactions. It was the same perfume I had coveted, testing it repeatedly at the store but never managing to buy. "Smells lovely. That's the one I've wanted to. Did you buy it?" I blurted out, immediately regretting my intrusive question. My curiosity felt tinged with jealousy, and I felt foolish for letting it slip. Yet, my mind couldn't shake the memory of those mysterious charges made on Wednesdays, the same days as the PTA meetings. It felt too coincidental. My suspicion deepened when Catherine replied cheerfully, "Actually, I got it as a gift. It was our anniversary the other day." Her laughter was carefree and genuine. "Oh, that's so nice. You two are so in love," I responded, forcing a smile while trying to suppress the growing doubts gnawing at me. We talked about lighter topics for a while before we parted ways. Despite her seemingly innocent demeanor, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. As I walked away, her words echoed in my mind. She had mentioned an anniversary, but hadn't clarified it was with her husband. Suddenly, I stopped, my thoughts racing. I turned back, hoping to clarify the slip, but Catherine had already vanished. The urge to confront her surged within me, fueled by a burgeoning suspicion of an affair between her and Henry. What had started as a small doubt had morphed into an overwhelming certainty I could no longer ignore. As the next Wednesday approached, my family saw me off to work as usual. I knew I had to confront whatever truths lay hidden, ready to untangle the mysteries clouding my heart. I arranged to leave work early without informing Henry, revealing my plans would defeat the purpose. So, I waited nearby, hidden in plain sight. As expected, my mother-in-law arrived, and shortly after, Henry left for what seemed to be his usual PTA board meeting. I discreetly followed him to the school, where the meeting took place in a classroom. About 30 minutes later, the members dispersed. Most hurried home, but Henry lingered. Finally, he exited the building and locked eyes with Catherine, intertwining their fingers. Their connection was undeniable as they walked toward a hotel, oblivious to my presence just a few meters away. A wave of anger and sorrow washed over me, distorting my face. I had trusted him, loved him. Had he encouraged my long work hours just to enjoy his own freedom? As I stood there, feeling utterly betrayed, my phone pinged with a notification, another charge on our credit card for the hotel they had just entered. Moments later, they emerged looking carefree and content. I managed to take a few photos as evidence of their affair, each snapshot hardening my heart a little more. The tears had dried up. Any trace of affection I once felt for Henry had faded. From that day on, I avoided him as much as possible, using my job as a convenient excuse. A part of me yearned to initiate a divorce immediately, but the thought of pulling Janet away from her father weighed heavily on my conscience, a decision I wasn't prepared to make without careful consideration. One night, lost in my troubled thoughts and quietly crying in the living room, I was jolted back to reality by Janet's voice. "Mom?" She had either stayed up late or woken due to my quiet distress. She approached me and hugged me gently, her simple act feeling like a lifeline amidst my turmoil. Her words hit me hard, releasing a flood of emotions I had been holding back. "I don't want you to be sad, Mom. Your enemies are my enemies, and I won't forgive anyone who makes you sad. Not even Dad." Her declaration brought tears to my eyes, tears of gratitude for her support and tears of regret for the upheaval I knew a divorce would cause. "If we go through with this, things will change drastically," I explained, my voice shaky. "We might have to move, and you won't see your dad every day. You might even have to change schools and leave your friends behind." But she cut through my torrent of worries with calm determination. "I still want to be with you, Mom. I want to be a nurse like you. I'll be okay. So please do what you think is best," she said, gripping my hands firmly. Her encouragement bolstered my resolve. Emboldened by her support, I began to scrutinize our finances more closely, a habit that soon uncovered further discrepancies. I discovered plans for a supposed week-long PTA board retreat, a concept that seemed absurd for parents who should be more present in their children's lives. Such a lengthy absence didn't align with Henry's usual commitments, and the extravagant details listed on the credit card only deepened my suspicions. Henry had underestimated my attentiveness. His efforts to cover his tracks were crumbling. Armed with a detailed list of credit card transactions, reservations at a chic restaurant, hotel booking confirmations, and even a request for a surprise cake, I had gathered enough evidence. The reality of his deception was unmistakable. And with Janet's unwavering support, I was ready to confront the situation and protect our future. I had always been thankful to Henry for choosing to stay at home with our daughter while I worked hard to provide for our family. However, discovering his betrayal felt like a harsh blow. It wasn't just personal, it jeopardized the very integrity of our family. On my next day off, I began to put my plan into action, a subtle form of revenge for his deceit. First, I contacted every hotel and restaurant he had booked, pretending to be his wife and claiming to have forgotten a few details. My ruse raised no suspicions. Later that evening, I executed the next part of my plan. Henry had transitioned from using cash to relying on our shared credit card after we got married. I found his wallet in the living room and swapped his current card with an expired one. It looked identical but had been void for 7 months. My previous procrastination in throwing it away now served a purpose. If he tried using this expired card, he'd only realize his mistake when it was declined, hopefully far from home. The next morning, as Henry cheerily announced he was leaving for meetings aimed at improving the school, he told Janet to take good care of me. We both smiled, masking our true feelings behind a facade of normalcy. As soon as he was out of sight, our smiles faded, and we sprang into action, packing our belongings hurriedly. The movers arrived promptly, their efficiency a blessing. We managed to relocate to our new home swiftly. As they asked where to place the last of the boxes, I casually replied, "Oh, don't worry about those. Just leave them there." They shrugged and continued, leaving the boxes piled in one corner of the room. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, a strange peace settled over me, mingled with the bittersweet realization that this might be the last time things felt normal with Henry. But as Janet and I began to unpack in our new space, I felt a resolve strengthening within us, ready to start anew after the moving crew handed over the last of the boxes, which seemed to arrive just in time. I ensured that all of Henry's belongings were packed away. The house felt stark and empty, stripped of his presence. In the living room, where we had shared countless memories, I created a poignant display, recent credit card statements, photos of Henry and Catherine that I had secretly taken, and my wedding ring, now devoid of meaning, accompanied by the stark finality of divorce papers. My phone buzzed with missed calls, all from Henry, who must have sensed something was off during his trip. Ignoring his frantic attempts to reach me, I texted him, saying I was caught up in several emergency operations and couldn't respond. Then, I silenced my phone and tucked it away at the bottom of my bag, wanting to distance myself from the chaos of his worried calls. Janet and I couldn't help but share a rueful laugh at the absurdity of the situation. It felt surreal, almost like a scene from a drama unfolding in real life. "Oh right, I should probably make one last call," I said, realizing there was still one more thing to take care of. We made that call a little later, securing the final piece of our exit strategy. A week later, Henry returned from his so-called business trip, cheerful and unsuspecting. He walked into what he expected to be a lively home but was instead met with emptiness and silence. The weight of reality crashed down on him as he discovered the documents and items I had left behind. He tried calling me repeatedly, but to no avail. I had already blocked his number, but then an unknown number flashed on his phone. Hopeful, he answered immediately, only to be greeted by a demand for payment. The caller was a hotel manager, explaining that all the bookings Henry believed were prepaid needed to be settled in cash. Because the credit card had expired, Henry was left humiliated and desperate, scrambling to borrow money to cover the costs. "So did you manage to borrow $5,000 from each of them? That's a lot of money. Did you go overseas? Must have been quite the trip. I hope Catherine didn't give you too much trouble," I said, my voice calm but laced with irony. Caught off guard, Henry's response was a mix of confusion and frustration, his voice dropping to a strained whisper. The reality of his situation was crashing down around him, the foundations of his deception crumbling, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. In the silence of the empty house, I watched as Henry turned pale, trembling so severely that he could barely speak. Is this Catherine? He managed to stutter, mistaking the caller for someone else. I'm honored you remember me. Yes, this is her husband. I know everything about you. I'll be demanding alimony, and I won't let you get away with this, I declared firmly, leaving no room for discussion. I ended the call abruptly, not waiting for Henry's response. Frantic, Henry tried to reach Catherine, but her phone was dead. It had been disconnected, a clear sign that her husband had been aware of the affair and had already taken steps to protect himself. He had called me earlier that day to inform me about their betrayal. Although he was taken aback to learn the identity of his wife's partner, he wasn't entirely surprised by her infidelity. He expressed deep remorse for his marriage and even offered his cooperation in any plans I had for exposing them. Armed with the address of Catherine's parents from her husband, I sent all of Henry's belongings, along with copies of the divorce papers and photos of the affair, to their home. Her parents, prominent and successful business owners, were furious. The scandal quickly became the talk of the neighborhood, leading to Catherine's divorce and the loss of custody of her children due to her adultery. Once a pillar of support, her family turned their backs on her, driven by the disgrace she had brought upon their reputation. When she arrived in tears, they refused to even let her inside their home. Left with no one to turn to, Catherine was forced to move into a modest apartment and take a grueling job with long hours and low pay to cover her alimony expenses. Meanwhile, Janet and I temporarily moved in with my parents until the divorce was finalized. Henry, now isolated and grappling with the consequences of his actions, returned to his roots, seeking solace on the family farm. Despite everything that transpired, I still keep in touch with Henry's family, primarily because they remain deeply invested in Janet's well-being. His father shared that Henry now dedicates every moment to working on the farm, driven by the need to keep up with alimony and child support payments. There was a noticeable tone of disappointment in his voice when discussing Henry's situation. My lawyer successfully negotiated a substantial sum for both alimony and child support, ensuring that Henry's financial obligations were significant. This will compel him to work extensively, leaving him little chance to save for himself in the foreseeable future. His father described it as almost a living hell. Once the divorce was finalized, Janet and I moved into a new house, and she started at a new school. Her teachers and classmates welcomed her warmly, and she's thriving in her new environment, which brings me a great deal of comfort. With Henry no longer part of our day-to-day lives, I took on the household responsibilities, striving to balance work and home life, a task that proved more challenging than I anticipated. However, I vastly prefer this life. Despite the increased workload, it feels liberating to be free from the turmoil and deceit of my previous marriage. I'm now more committed to living a happier and more productive life, embracing the freedom from past negativity. Each day reaffirms that moving forward was the right choice for both Janet and me.